What if a toy knew you? Not just any toy, a forgotten relic, a teddy bear, old and worn, and it knew your name, your private name. Imagine that cold, creeping feeling. An impossible, terrifying connection from something inanimate. This isn't a friendly greeting from a novelty. No, this is something older, more sinister, a shiver down your spine. Primal fear screaming something is wrong, a dark secret held tight within simple stitching and aged, matted fur. We tell ourselves these are just stories, urban legends whispered in the dark. But what if one of those stories wasn't just a story? What if the line between nightmare and reality blurred? This is that kind of story. So, lean in, turn down the lights if you dare. Because what you're about to witness might change how you look at those old toys forever. The story has already begun. It all began on a perfectly normal, unassuming day. The Miller family, mother, father, and young Lily, lived a quiet, routine life. On a sunny Saturday, they set out for local yard sales, hunting for hidden gems. Old lamps, forgotten books, discarded clothes. Mundane treasures. But some pasts are not meant to be disturbed. Some memories fester quietly, waiting for a curious touch. The Millers were about to learn this lesson the hard way. Their innocent search for bargains would unearth something far more sinister, a darkness, patient and waiting, hidden among the clutter. The illusion of suburban peace was about to shatter. Sometimes the most ordinary days hide the most extraordinary dangers, and sometimes the past refuses to stay buried. The Miller family's world was about to change forever, all because of a single, forgotten toy. Lily, 7 years old, skipped ahead, drawn by an unseen thread. Past chipped teacups and faded paintings, she found a table of forgotten toys. There, half hidden beneath a porcelain doll, was a teddy bear, matted, worn, and lonely. Its button eyes held a deep sadness. One ear drooped, a relic of time. Lily reached out, brushing the plush, and froze. On its chest, a patch, stitched in faded crimson thread. A name, her name, Lily, impossible, chilling. She gasped, then smiled. "Mommy, Daddy, look! This bear has my name!" Her parents laughed, charmed by the coincidence. They paid a few dollars, thinking it a harmless find, but they had no idea what they brought home. The true cost of this discovery would soon become clear. Sometimes fate is stitched in thread and memory, and sometimes it waits for the right child to find it. The bear's story was only beginning. Lily clutched the bear all the way home, her heart full of joy. To her, it was more than a toy, it was special, destined. She named it Lily's Bear, declaring an instant bond. She hummed to it, showed it her favorite things, and gave it a place of honor on her bed. Her parents saw only a child's happiness, nothing more. But the bear stood out. Old, sorrowful, a relic among modern plushies. Lily imagined adventures, secrets, and friendship. The bear's button eyes watched, its presence oddly still. Shadows seemed to lengthen around it, the air subtly colder. Lily was lost in the magic of her new treasure. Her parents, David and Sarah, watched from the doorway, amused and unaware. The coincidence of the name was a story to tell friends, but the bear had a story of its own, waiting to be told. Sometimes a child's joy is the perfect invitation, and sometimes the past finds its way home. That night Sarah was drawn to the bear. In the quiet it felt heavier, colder, ancient. She traced the stitched name Lily with a shiver. The thread was coarse, hand-sewn, deeply personal. How many Lilies had owned this bear? How did it end up here? The coincidence now felt like a puzzle, unsettling and out of place. David tried to reassure her, but unease flickered in his eyes. The bear's vacant stare seemed to absorb the light. They placed it back beside Lily, a silent sentinel in the dark. Its presence cast a subtle shadow over the room. Something about it didn't belong in their world. The house felt too still, as if waiting for something. Sometimes the quietest objects hold the loudest secrets. Sunday brought routine, but the atmosphere had changed. Lily was happy, her bear always by her side, but her parents felt a growing unspoken disquiet. Sarah noticed misplaced items, sudden chills, easy to dismiss but unsettling. The house felt watchful, different. David heard faint noises, saw fleeting shadows. He tried to rationalize, but the feeling grew stronger. The bear remained a constant, silent observer. Its button eyes seemed to follow, its stitched smile inscrutable. It was just a toy, or so they told themselves, but the air around it felt charged, heavy. The Miller home was subtly transforming. Unease threaded itself through the everyday. Sometimes the most ordinary things become extraordinary threats, and sometimes a presence enters quietly, changing everything. As night fell, the house grew quiet. Lily slept, her bear nestled beside her, but for Sarah and David, Sleep was elusive. The day's oddities replayed in their minds, a pattern of subtle wrongness. Sarah couldn't shake the image of the bear, its stitched name. The odds felt impossible. The coincidence, a sign. David, practical and logical, felt a growing dread he couldn't explain. The house seemed to listen, every shadow deeper, every sound sharper. The Miller family stood on the edge of something terrifying. The stage was set, the relic in place. Soon, the silence would break, and a whisper would change everything, forever. Sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that find you. The house sank into the night. Silence pressed in. Outside the world was muted. Streetlights cast long shadows. Each tick of the grandfather clock boomed. In Lily's room the darkness was absolute. Beside her sat Lily's bear. Its button eyes stared into the void. Down the hall Sarah and David lay in their own bed. Sleep was restless. Sarah kept seeing the bear's face. David fought against the fear. A deeper instinct whispered a terrifying truth. The shadows seemed to writhe. An unseen presence lingered. It was the quiet that precedes a storm. The house held its breath. The first whisper was coming. It was almost here. Suddenly Lily stirred in the suffocating darkness of her room. A frown creased her small forehead, even in sleep. She whimpered softly, a small, almost inaudible sound, as if her dreams were troubled by unseen phantoms. The air around her bed felt colder now, noticeably colder, a strange, unnatural chill that had no earthly source. It clung to her skin, raising goosebumps on her arms. She shivered, pulling her blanket tighter around her small frame. But the cold wasn't just in the air, it felt like it was seeping from something nearby. Then, it came. A sound so faint, so slight. At first, she thought it was part of her fading dream. A whisper, not the mechanical whir of a toy voice box. No, this was different. This was real. A soft, sibilant breath, forming a sound. It was close, so terribly close to her ear. Help! The word hung in the air, delicate as a spider's thread, but heavy with an ancient, unimaginable sorrow. Lily's eyes snapped open wide with a sudden primal fear. The darkness of her room pressed in, disorienting her. Was she awake? Was she dreaming? The silence returned, thick and absolute once more. Had she imagined it? A trick of the tired mind? She lay perfectly still, her heart hammering against her ribs. A frantic bird trapped within a tiny cage. She strained her ears, listening for any repetition, any confirmation that she wasn't slowly losing her mind. The room remained stubbornly, terrifyingly quiet, but then, the cold intensified, a deep, biting chill, and the whisper came again, a little clearer this time, a pleading, desperate sigh breathed right beside her. Help. Me. It was a voice, a real voice, small and fragile, like a lost child crying softly in the endless night. Lily's breath caught in her throat, a silent scream trapped within. This was no dream, this was horribly, impossibly real, and the sound she instinctively knew came from the bear, the teddy bear that knew her name. Lily turned her head, her eyes fixed upon the teddy bear. Could it speak? The whisper had been clear, real, a desperate plea for assistance. Go! Home! Laced with sadness, heartbroken, a tear escaped her eye. Fear warred with pity, someone lost, in pain. It was coming from the bear. A compulsion kept her still. She felt its loneliness, its need to return home, no longer just a toy, a vessel, a conduit for a voice. Lily knew, chilled to the bone, it wouldn't be the last. The first rays of dawn brought little comfort to Lily. She had barely slept, haunted by the whispers in the dark. When her mother, Sarah, came to wake her for the day, Lily looked pale, her eyes wide and shadowed. "Mommy," she began, her voice small and trembling slightly. "Lily's bear. He talked to me last night." Sarah knelt beside the bed, concern flooding her features. "Oh, sweetie, you must have had a vivid dream." She brushed Lily's hair from her forehead gently. "Bears can't talk, you know that, silly." Lily shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "No, Mommy, it wasn't a dream," he whispered. "He said help me." Sarah exchanged a worried glance with David, who stood in the doorway. A child's overactive imagination, they tried to reassure themselves. Perhaps she was unsettled by the old bear's appearance. "He just wants to go home," Lily insisted, her lower lip trembling. They soothed her as best they could, promising bad dreams fade. But Lily's conviction was unnerving, deeply unsettling. It wasn't the usual monster-under-the-bed fantasy. There was a desperate sincerity in her young voice. Later that morning, the strange occurrences began again, but this time they were more pronounced, more undeniable. Sarah went to make coffee only to find the entire canister missing. She searched the kitchen, bewildered, finally locating it. Chillingly, it was placed neatly inside the cold oven. David found his car keys, which he always left on the hall table, resting inexplicably on top of the highest bookshelf in the living room, a place he couldn't have reached without a stepladder. These weren't mere acts of forgetfulness. Something was actively moving things, playing tricks. Cold spots permeated the house with a new intensity. No longer fleeting, they lingered in certain areas, especially around Lily's room and near the teddy bear itself. The air would suddenly drop in temperature, making them shiver. Even with the heating on, these pockets of icy cold remained. David, the pragmatist, checked windows for drafts, the thermostat. He found no logical explanation for the biting chill. The feeling of being watched intensified tenfold. They couldn't shake the growing, terrifying suspicion that Lily's dream and these bizarre events were connected. The day wore on. The Miller house now felt infiltrated by an unseen presence. David and Sarah spoke in hushed tones, glancing towards Lily's room. Fear tightened its grip. They observed the teddy bear with growing fear. Its dark, unreadable button eyes and stitched smile seemed to mock their anxiety. Sarah picked it up once. Its fur felt colder than ever. The missing objects, the cold, Lily's insistence, it all pointed to something beyond their understanding, something paranormal tied to that old bear. The yard sale find had become an object of dread. As evening approached, foreboding filled the house. They knew the worst was far from over. The bear had only just begun to speak. The whispers lingered, echoing in Lily's frightened eyes. David and Sarah watched their daughter, her bright spirit dimmed by anxiety and sleepless nights. Objects moved, defying logic. Their home, once a sanctuary, now felt haunted. The old teddy bear a tangible form of torment. Skepticism eroded, replaced by fear for their child. They knew something was terribly wrong. The bear, Lily stitched on it, was the key to this nightmare. They had to unlock its past, an unspoken accord forged in fear. They had to understand its history, confront the ancient sorrowful presence. The first step, retrace their path to the yard sale. Someone must know the bear's secrets. David and Sarah returned to the suburban street where the yard sale had taken place. They found the house, but there was no sign of a yard sale. The lawn was neat, the house looked empty. A neighbor said the house had been empty for weeks. How was this possible? Had they imagined the yard sale where Lily found the bear? The trail had gone cold. They drove away, the mystery of the bear deepening. Defeated, David and Sarah knew their investigation needed a new direction. The name Lily was their only solid clue. They decided to delve into local historical records and newspaper archives. Could there have been a child named Lily, linked to this area? The thought of sifting through decades of forgotten news was daunting, but Lily's fear propelled them forward. Their search began at the local library. They spent hours hunched over microfiche readers, scrolling through endless pages of faded newsprint. Days turned into a week of frustrating research. They couldn't risk exposing Lily further to the house's oppressive atmosphere. Each fruitless search chipped away at their hope. They expanded their search to county records and online historical databases. The sheer volume of human history was overwhelming. The bear's plea, "Help me, go home," echoed in their minds. Late one evening, Sarah scrolled through an online archive of a defunct local newspaper. A headline caught her eye: "Local child still missing." The article detailed the disappearance of 6-year-old Lily Masterson. A faded photograph accompanied the article, clear enough to show a little girl with bright eyes and a hopeful smile. In her arms was a teddy bear that looked strikingly familiar, exactly where the stitched name Lily was on their bear. A wave of nausea washed over Sarah. "Help me, go home." It was the voice of a lost child tethered to her beloved toy. The discovery of Lily Masterson's story cast a long, dark shadow. That grainy newspaper photo became a constant haunting presence. David and Sarah felt something profound shift inside themselves. They were now inextricably tied to a real-world tragedy. The weight of this truth was immense. They looked at their own daughter Lily and couldn't help but think of Lily Masterson. The bear was no longer just a haunted object, it had become a relic of loss. The stitched name Lily was a heartbreaking connection. That knowledge was a heavy burden. It also raised terrifying new questions. A mystery that was now theirs to confront. It was a tragic object, a focal point for so much pain. How could they help a spirit tethered to such an old tragedy? The teddy bear now also bore the haunting weight of another Lily, lost long ago. The days following the discovery of Lily Masterson's story were anything but peaceful. In the Miller household, the air seemed to grow denser, almost saturated with a dread that felt electrical. The teddy bear's whispers, once soft and mournful, became more frequent, more demanding. Lily, the living child, began to flinch at nightfall. She would clutch the bear, her knuckles white, as if bracing herself against some invisible tide. The bear's voice sounded sharper now, not just sad but desperate, almost angry. "Please, go home, please," it hissed, sometimes repeating those words until they seemed to fill every shadowed corner. Sarah and David could only watch, helpless, as things escalated. They tried to comfort their daughter, but their reassurances rang hollow in the face of the impossible. Every night, the temperature in Lily's room plummeted. Frost gathered on the inside of the window pane, even as summer pressed hard against the glass outside. The bear would sometimes be found in places no one had put it, on the windowsill, at the foot of the stairs, or cradled in Lily's arms even when she swore she'd left it across the room. The rules of normal life just didn't seem to apply anymore. The whispers took on new words. Sometimes in the middle of the night, Sarah would wake to hear her daughter muttering back to the bear, her voice low and trembling. "I don't know where home is," she would say over and over as if trying to answer the plea. The boundary between the living and the lost was fading. The Miller family was being drawn into the bear's sorrowful orbit, deeper and deeper with each passing night. Even in daylight, the house felt wrong. Shadows seemed to slide along the walls, following the family as they moved. Small, inexplicable things kept shifting. Picture frames turned backwards, doors that closed themselves. Pieces of old, forgotten childhood toys appeared in odd places, almost as if the house itself was remembering. The bear's demand was clear now, and honestly, it wasn't going to wait much longer. As the whispers in the house grew louder, Lily herself began to change. Her parents saw it first in her eyes, a distant, haunted look that had never been there before. She spoke less, ate less, and spent long hours sitting motionless with the bear in her lap. There were mornings when she would not recall what she had done the night before. She started to draw disturbing pictures: a little girl standing alone in a forest, a house with every window blacked out, a teddy bear with wide, staring eyes. Sarah tried to reach her daughter with gentle questions, but Lily's answers were vague and confused. "The bear wants to go home," she would say, her voice flat. "The other Lily is sad. She can't find her mommy." David watched her sleep one night and saw her lips moving silently, as if in conversation with someone only she could hear. Sometimes Lily would wake up crying, unable to say why, and would cling to Sarah with the bear squeezed tightly between them. There were moments when Lily's behavior grew alarming. She wandered the house in the early hours, opening doors and windows as if searching for something. One night Sarah found her standing at the front door, shivering and barefoot, whispering, "I'm ready, I want to go home now." The fear in Sarah's heart was like ice. Her daughter was slipping away, pulled by the gravity of a tragedy from half a century ago. The family began to fear for more than just their peace of mind. The bear was not just a haunted relic, it was a magnet for sorrow and loss, and Lily, their Lily, was its focus. Whatever had found its way into their home, it was growing stronger, feeding on the thin line between past and present, between innocence and horror. They knew they could not wait any longer to face the truth. Driven by desperation, David and Sarah began to confront the bear directly. They sat together in Lily's room one evening, the lights low, the bear set between them like an ancient judge. "What do you want?" David asked, his voice trembling not just with fear, but with a strange, protective anger. The air grew so cold their breath rose in clouds. The bear's button eyes seemed to glisten in the half-dark, and the whispers came clear and urgent. "Go home. Show me home. Help me." The parents pieced together what the bear was trying to say. It was not just a vessel for Lily Masterson's spirit, it was a beacon. A lost child's last anchor to the world. The bear remembered the last place it was loved, the last hands that held it. It remembered a house, a yard, the echo of a mother's voice. Its desperate plea to go home was a demand to return to the scene of the crime, to the place where Lily Masterson had vanished. Sarah clutched the printed newspaper article, her own hands shaking. "Is this your home?" she asked, holding up the photo of the old house where Lily Masterson had lived. The room seemed to shudder, the shadows deepening. The whisper almost a scream now. "Yes, yes, home." The bear's memory was not just a memory, it was a map, and a demand. The family realized with horror that their only hope of peace was to bring the bear to the place it longed for, to return it to the scene of its greatest sorrow. They made a plan, It was the only thing left to do. The time for denial had ended. The line between this world and the next was open, raw, and the bear was the bridge. The truth was no longer something to fear, it was something to face, together before they lost their daughter completely. The night before they were to return, the bear was the worst of all. Shadows thickened in the house until the lights themselves seemed to flicker with fear. Every hallway echoed with footsteps that did not belong to the living. The bear's voice was everywhere. In the vents, under the beds, inside their dreams. Home, take me home, please, please. The desperation in the whispers was now matched by a presence. Something cold and heavy, pressing on their chests, holding them in place. Lily was the epicenter of the chaos. She tossed in her sleep, sobbing and calling out for her mother. The bear glowed faintly with a strange, unnatural light. Doors slammed themselves shut, windows rattled. The house was alive with the grief of the past, demanding resolution. Sarah and David sat awake, holding each other, too afraid to close their eyes. They could feel the presence moving through the house, searching, yearning, not just for peace, but for justice or release. At the stroke of midnight, the bear began to wail. Not a sound but a vibration in the air, a pressure behind the eyes, a sorrow so deep it felt like drowning. "Go home," it commanded, the force of its pain shaking the very walls. Lily sat bolt upright in bed, her eyes wide and shining with tears. "Please, Mommy, take us home," she sobbed. The bear climbed onto her lap of its own accord, or so it seemed. The family knew in that moment they could wait no longer. To save their daughter, to put the lost spirit to rest, they would have to return to the place where the story began. The truth was not just something to be uncovered, it was a force that demanded action. Their innocence was gone, replaced by a terrible knowledge. Some toys do remember, some names are never forgotten, and some nightmares, once awoken, will not sleep again until they are finally, truly home. Just before dawn, the Miller family set out. They drove in silence to the forgotten town. Lily laid the bear on the stoop of the old Masterson home. The wind picked up. A whisper drifted through the air. "Thank you." The oppressive presence slowly ebbed, replaced by a quiet sorrow. The Miller family turned away, leaving the bear where it belonged. But the mystery lingers. Some secrets never stay buried, and some toys remember more than we ever will. The story is over, or maybe it's only sleeping. Some nightmares are never truly gone.